Breadbox Media programming is brought to you by Jack Kane Ford. Find your next Ford Tough vehicle at caneford.com. Woodhill Community Center. Have a hand in the heart of the city. Support their mission with your donations at woodhillcommunitycenter.org. Toyota in Nicholasville Superstore. Online consultants are standing by right now to help you find your next Toyota. Visit toyotaonnicholasville.com. Lexus of Lexington, home of the best-selling Lexus IS. Find yours today at lexusoflexington.com. Introducing the redesigned CatholicSingles.com, featuring new ways that put the spotlight on the person and their faith, not just a profile picture. For the past 20 years, faithful Catholics have used CatholicSingles.com, and the reimagined CatholicSingles.com website is ready to help single Catholics take the next step in sharing meaningful relationships with other faithful Catholics. Remember, CatholicSingles.com for faith, fellowship, and love.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Lisa, Hendey, and Friends. I am so thrilled, as always, to be back behind the microphone with you and to bring you another new friend, somebody that's doing amazing work and focused today on something that's very close to my heart, and that's the topic of storytelling and great stories and really why they matter. And this week we welcome author Leslea Wahl, who will be sharing with us her work on a new fiction anthology that's just heading out to you to uplift your summer reading. Leslea is an award-winning author of Catholic teen adventurous mysteries. She lives in beautiful Colorado with her family, and her work can be discovered at LeslieWahl.com. Welcome to the show, Leslea.
Thanks so much for having me. It's such a joy to be here.
Well, it's a treat, and I always love having authors on, but I especially love having fellow storytellers on. So I'm just wanting to start off with knowing a little bit more about, I sort of know this, but I'd love for you to share with our listeners. What is that brought you to the work that you do in writing, specifically fiction?
Oh, sure. I've always been creative, even when I was little, but never really thought about writing at all. And it was when my oldest son, who actually is out of college now, so this was a while ago, and when he was in 5th grade, he was a really advanced reader, and he kept wanting to read young adult novels, but I was having the hardest time finding appropriate ones, fun, adventurous ones that he wanted to read, yet reflecting the values that we were trying to instill in him. And I just kept wondering, why doesn't anyone write the kind of books I'm looking for? I didn't know at that time that it would be me. But soon after that, the idea for a book just popped into my head. Characters and scenes just kept coming to me until I finally felt like I needed to write them down. And that turned eventually into my first novel, The Perfect Blind Side. So I really felt like God was calling me on this journey. And since then, I have written a few others, one that is also out and published, one that's coming out in September. And then I just recently found out that the sequel to The Perfect Blind Side will be coming out next year.
Fantastic. Let's back up a little bit, though, because I know for me, one of the most frequent conversations that I have these days is with people who seem to be interested in writing but don't know, really how to get started. And they'll ask me, did you take writing classes, or what was it that you did? And I always have to kind of tell them that I think God had a plan, because I was very ill-equipped to pick up the mantle of being a writer. I always loved reading, but I never really had any formal writing training. So how about you? Did you study writing in college, or was it just when you came up with this first idea that you began to dive into the storytelling craft?
Yeah, great question. I was a communication major, so I wrote a little bit, and I always was kind of drawn to writing. In the places I worked, I would work on the newsletter, but those were just small little things, nothing big, and not fiction. So when I did get the idea and jotted it down, I didn't know what to do with it and kind of tried to work on it myself, and then came across in the local Denver area, there's chapters everywhere, but the local SCBWI, which is for authors of children's books, and they actually had a program where they would match you with a mentor. And to me, that was invaluable because she was able to say, wow, it's an interesting idea, but you've got a lot of work to do to get it to. And we did. We worked on it for like a year. And then I slowly started sending it out. But even after that, I'd get feedback and kept changing it. So, and I still do. That's what editors and so forth are for. But I knew that because I felt like God gave me this idea, when the doors kept shutting, I just kept thinking, well, this has got to go somewhere. I feel like this is His plan. So I just kept pursuing it.
Persistence, that's the great trait of any great author. So I'm calling this podcast Why Stories Matter. I'm just curious to know from you. I mean, you're a mother, but also a woman, and in other relationships. I'm curious about your thoughts about why it is that we, as writers, have the ability to impact hearts and souls specifically through this craft of storytelling, when we know that there are so many reams and reams of paper that are written every year in the apologetics mode, but storytelling seems to touch people's hearts in a different way. Why is that?
Yeah, that's a very good question, but I think there's a way that we can relate a little bit better instead of just researching stuff, seeing a different character going through a struggle or going through something. We can relate, and it's an enjoyable way. So it's a little different than just kind of studying something dry. And just recently, we was discussing this with some other authors, and Jesus, he was such a storyteller too, and instead of just telling us rules and things, he did it in different ways through the parables. And so it's kind of a unique way to connect with people, I think.
You answered the question the way that I was hoping you would. I ask this question frequently of writer friends myself, and it's actually something now that I get to go out and visit schools for my Chime Travelers visits. It's something that I regularly talk to students about, and I think it's something that actually even children as young as kindergarten or first or second grade can kind of understand the way that they're uniquely called to be what I call God's storyteller. Now, in your work, one of the kind of consistent themes is, and it's very appropriate that your books are for teens, because one of the things that you talk about so regularly is this sense of using the giftedness that God's given you as your unique calling. Why is that particularly important in teen fiction?
Well, that's something I've been just feeling for years, that we all have unique gifts and abilities. Some people are amazing at math. Some people are amazing at working with people. Others, it's their writing. We all have things that God gave us, and to find a way to use those and to draw people to Him, I think, is kind of the key. And so it's something that I like to include in the books, because I think sometimes it takes a while for people to realize this. Younger kids and teens don't necessarily think that they have special gifts, and sometimes it's hard to find those. You see somebody who does such amazing things, and you think, well, I don't have anything to contribute, but everyone does. And I also have done some school visits and try to talk about that. It could just be that you're a great soccer player, but you're a good teammate, and you can have a conversation with people and befriend somebody. It can happen in so many different ways. I like for kids to think about that, what they really have as opposed to what they don't have.
Now, Leslea, the genre that you write is particularly challenged these days, I think, because as we record this, I actually just this morning did a radio segment on technology to help parents interface with the screen time that their kids are using on their mobile devices. And anybody who pays attention to the world around them knows that we see a lot more teens and grown-ups these days staring at phones than at books. So is fiction and the craft of writing books for teens still something that's relevant? Do you think that there's still a call for these kinds of stories?
I think there is. Reading such a wonderful thing, and but you're right, it is. There's so many other things that are pulling the kids and drawing them. But I find a lot of parents and guardians and so forth are searching for the books to try to give to kids, and that's why I like to kind of have fun adventures, but with a good message, because they're, the kids have so many other options and they want fun, and so something real heavy or with too much moral, sometimes it comes off as too heavy for them. So I like to try to make it fun, but they can grow in their faith at the same time. And I think especially I've noticed a lot of the publishers kind of are shying away from doing young adult novels lately. And that's such a shame, because that's really, I think, where we need to reach kids, especially because there's so much out there. And the things that they are involved in with this, as you mentioned, phones and movies and everything, there's so many negative and bad messages that it's hard to get some of the good, positive Christian ones to them. So hopefully through our books, we're able to do that.
I was actually asking that question as a devil's advocate, because I'm 100% with you on that. And it's actually one of my pastimes when I'm traveling for speaking, to look around airports and see, how many people actually have a book in their hand. Now, these days, you never really know, because somebody could actually be reading, on their device. They could be reading fiction. But it seems to me, and this could be colored a little bit by the fact that I live, in LA, where storytelling is such an important craft. But it seems to me that there's more demand than ever for stories, because we see content creation through Netflix and Amazon, and certainly every major filmmaker looking all the time for the latest and greatest stories. How, in a way, is your writing impacted by that? This idea that there's such a call for 24/7 entertainment around us. Do you find yourself writing differently because of that?
I don't know. I never really thought of that.
I'll share, while you think about it for a second, I'll share what I think about this as a writer. So like you, write fiction. Mine is for a little bit younger kids. But one thing that I've found myself doing when I write, it's part of my writing process to go through. It's almost like a period of Lectio Divina. When I'm writing a scene, I will really first pray, and then I'll just kind of sit in wherever the space is that I'm writing, and I'll almost imagine my characters as if I could see them playing out the action in a movie, the dialogue that they're having, where the place that they're going to, engages the senses of smell and sight and touch, and what they're hearing around them. It's almost as if I'm entering into a movie version of what I'm writing, and then I'll, when I get to the conclusion of that scene in my head, just pull out my keyboard and start typing like crazy to capture it all down. But it's like I want to be able to see the world of my characters in a three-dimensional sense, and almost as if, one day it would be on a big screen. Do you find yourself doing that in your writing?
Yes. Yeah, I do. In fact, because I do a kind of adventure, I'm always picturing how it would be, and gotten some comments that people were like, "Oh, that would make a great show or a movie." So I'm like, "Oh, I must have been able to capture what I was envisioning when I write it." So, and you're right that is a way for people to connect, because if they can kind of see it come to life in their minds, that really helps them wanting to read more and read other things like that.
So one thing that I wanted to ask you about was the characters in your books. Now, you have written some wonderful books, and The Perfect Blind Side has actually been awarded first place from the Catholic Press Association in 2016 for fiction. And then another book that you wrote, An Unexpected Role, is also an award-winning book. And your characters in these books do have like activities. Tell us a little bit about the characters in these stories, and what kids will discover when they meet these characters.
So The Perfect Blind Side, like I said, that one just kind of came to me, and I'm not exactly sure why. It must just have been things that I've been interested in. But that one's about actually an Olympic snowboarder who just won a silver medal, and his fame has kind of gone to his head. And I think I was always fascinated by that, when sudden fame, that when somebody is so good and nobody knows who they are, and then the Olympics or something else happens, and suddenly everyone knows them. I just think, especially as a teen, that would be so hard to deal with. So that's kind of the premise on that book. And his family moves him to a small Colorado town where he meets a girl who thinks, he's pretty full of himself. But over time, they find out more about each other and have to solve a mystery together.
Yeah, that's I think the setting of that is obviously influenced by the world that you live in. You and I had a chance to meet last weekend in Colorado, and certainly, being in your hometown and seeing kind of the beauty of Denver and its surrounding environs, I can see how it would play into this story. So, when you're writing your characters, do you take elements of them from people that you know in your real life?
Yeah, somewhat. It's actually a funny story. When I was writing the first book, I was trying to make it real, so I was watching my kids interact and would jot down, things that teens or kids would say, so I could incorporate it to make it sound realistic. And I had this thought that, what if a writer wrote too much about her kids? And so that was kind of the premise of the second book I wrote, An Unexpected Role. And that one probably touches our lives a little bit more, because it has a baseball player, which my boys were, and a girl who's in theater, which my daughter was. But I kept telling them, no, it's really not about you. I just was inspired by these things. But sometimes it's kind of hard to separate them all.
And I'm curious about the act of writing fiction, and specifically mystery. So I know my process for when I'm working on a story, and I feel sorry for my family because I tend to neglect everything else except what my characters are doing in those moments. So how do you come up with the idea of the arc of writing a mystery and solving the mystery?
Yeah. I've always loved mysteries. As a kid, Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys and those kinds of things. For some reason, I've always been fascinated by those, and the whodunit and trying to figure it out. So if I get an idea, I don't always have the whole idea, because you want to kind of figure out how to incorporate other things so that people don't know exactly what's going on. Yeah, so sometimes I have notebooks everywhere and jot crazy ideas down that happen, at dinner time or out at a soccer game. Suddenly an idea comes. So yeah, it gets a little crazy sometimes, but it is fun. And sometimes there's an idea will just pop, or it seems like it's too obvious who might have done something. So then I try to just dwell on it and think a different way to do it. And often the idea just kind of pops into my head eventually. So I don't know if that's the Holy Spirit guiding me or what. But it is fun to create this new world.
It's the benefit of being a writer who really invites God into her process, that you get those little tips every once in a while. I certainly have had those, and I've actually been woken up in the middle of the night with sort of complete lines of dialogue where I was sort of stuck on a particular topic. So I've learned to keep a notebook next to my bed just in case those moments come along. So certainly, I think all the writers out there are nodding their heads right now, going, yeah, I'm not crazy to be hearing voices in my head. So let's just talk a little bit about this very special project that you're a part of. It's a brand new anthology. The name of this book is Secrets, Visible and Invisible. And this is actually a team project that has come up through several authors who are part of a wonderful website called CatholicTeenBooks.com. And I'm a little curious to know sort of where this idea came from and what folks will discover when they pick up Secrets, Visible and Invisible.
Sure. Backtrack just a bit. You mentioned the website, and that came about a year and a half ago. Author Susan Peak, she writes amazing stories about saints, she and I were doing a talk together in Kansas for a homeschooling group. And we were sharing about all kinds of fabulous books for teens that families might be interested in. And after this meeting, a mom came up to us and said, "These books sound great, but they're really hard to find. Is there some place that you could put them all together so we could just see them?" So when we got back home to our homes from this conference, we contacted several other authors who write teen fiction, Catholic teen fiction, and together we came up with this idea to make a website where we can all have our books there and we can help promote each other's works. And it's many different genres. We have historic fiction, saints, mysteries, dystopian, romance, and from many different ages, and we kind of list them through, from like 5th grade up through high school. We have a teacher page, so you know which books have what kind of themes and so forth. So that's been really fun to work with. And then some of us had an idea to create an anthology of short stories to kind of garner some more readers for everybody. And there's 13 of us on the website, but there's just 7 in this anthology this time. Hopefully we'll be able to do another one sometime. And so this book is, like I said, short stories. Some of the stories are about characters that are in some of our previous books, so you can get a taste of those. And some are brand new stories. But it's a great way to enjoy some great fiction stories, plus meet some new authors and become acquainted to their styles, so forth.
That's what I really enjoyed about. I didn't get to read the full book yet, but I read your particular section of it, and in that I met, before having read your other books, I met your characters, and I definitely got a taste of what they're all about, and it makes me definitely want to go pick up the books as well that feature those characters fully. Was that intentional for you to sort of introduce your characters in this story?
Yeah, for me, so as you mentioned, my short story includes my characters from my 2 published books, and they happen to be related in my mind. And so I always thought it'd be fun to use it as a tool, make a short story and make it as a tool to draw people to the other books. And when this idea came up, I thought, well, this would work out really well. So it was really fun to get back to those characters and create a new adventure for them. In fact, I've thought of another little short story I might do another time with them. And many of the other authors did that too. So it's neat to, when you read books, you kind of always want to know a little bit more about characters. So to have another little segment in their lives is fun to get to. But like I said, there's some that are brand new stories too. And they're all different also. Again, we have a saint story, we have a dystopian, we have my mysteries, several contemporary. So it's a really great way. And short stories are fun because they are short, so you can, if you don't have a lot of time, it's perfect for the summer to just pick it up and read 1 or 2 at a time. Enjoy them.
That's what I was going to recommend. Is I think this is we want you to read it anytime, no matter if you're listening to this later on. But I think that for summer, so many parents are trying to balance, keeping their kids occupied and busy, but also keeping them off their screens. And this particular anthology, I think, would be the perfect thing to have a teen or even an elementary school student. Many of them could read at this reading level level, and I'm sure there's nothing objectionable in this book, that this would be such a great thing for you to just say, well, you can have your screen as soon as you read one chapter of XYZ, and pretty sure they'll want to keep going. I know I didn't want to do anything yesterday except finish your story.
Oh, fun. Thank you.
So the book is coming out now. How can folks get a hold of Secrets Visible and Invisible?
It will be on Amazon is usually the easiest way. And then you can also visit our website, and they'll have a link there to go to it on Amazon.
And is it Kindle or softcover?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
That's great. It's kind of amazing now in the world of writing that I'm traditionally published for my nonfiction, and there sort of can be this very long lead time, of a book from the conception of the idea to the actual printing can sometimes be just months and months, and frankly, many, many months. Or you can actually, as in many of the cases of some of our writing colleagues, you can self-publish these days and get a book out relatively quickly. That's kind of a magical thing that we can do these days.
Yeah.
Your regular, your personal books are published through, are they through the same publisher or different publishers?
Actually, different publishers. Yes, the first one is through Pauline Books and Media, and they'll be doing the sequel too. But actually, I've a third one coming out in September, as I said, and they each have different publishers. It's just the way it worked out. But many of the colleagues are able to self-publish and have wonderful books out there. I personally just kind of liked having a publisher help me with it. But except this anthology we did self-publish, but several of the authors involved are wonderful editors and so forth, so it worked out really well.
One thing when I visit schools and talk to kids about storytelling that I always stress is that to be a great storyteller, you have to be a great consumer of stories. And that for those of us who write, we need to always be reading and always have a book in our hands and, always be learning from the books that we read. So who are some of your favorite authors to read?
Well, I love all kinds of books. I've been in a couple different book clubs, and those books, we tend to do the more regular book club books out of the bigger publishing companies. But I'm glad you brought that up, because there is something that's become a passion of mine. After my first book was published, I realized there's a lot of people like I was and couldn't find good Christian and Catholic books for kids. But there are a lot out there, but it's hard to find. And it seems like a lot of Catholic bookstores sometimes shy away from fiction books for some reason, and Christian bookstores sometimes shy away from Catholic books. So it leaves this genre of books that people have trouble finding. So one of the things I started doing recently is reviewing a lot of Christian and Catholic teen books. And I review them on my website, but also other places like CatholicMom.com. Because there are some fabulous books out there, but I just try to help people find them and know which ones to pick up and what the stories are about and so forth, because it's such an important thing and hard to find. So a lot of the books I read lately are Catholic and YA. And some of the ones I love, Corinna Turner, who is part of our anthology, she writes a dystopian series called I Am Margaret, which...
Oh, yes, I've heard great things about that book.
I love that book so much. And Teresa Linden, her series on the West Brothers is fabulous. And Amanda Lauer, I recently read A World Such as Heaven Intended. That was incredible. So like I said, there's just so many wonderful books out there and just not enough time to read them. Absolutely.
It's really one of the big balancing acts, I think, as a writer, is this need to, meet our deadlines and do all that. But I really do. Every time I read a book, and I try to read many, many different kinds of books, I find something that I learn from my own writing. And so I do think that as a storyteller, it's just critical that we be consuming, and reading and always looking at the world around us from the perspective of what we can learn and bring to our craft. So do you prefer a Kindle, or do you prefer to read paper, or will you just, like me, read the back of a cereal box or anything that's within hands and grasp?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I have some of both, but because I've been reading so many, I do Kindle and Kindle on my phone. It just is a little easier. I can have it everywhere I go. But there's something about those paper books and turning the page that is always wonderful. And because I've been doing these reviews, and I decided, well, one of the kids at one of these homeschool groups asked about some kind of genres that I usually never read, and so that got me just into reading as many different genres as I can find. And every month I try to, on my own website, post about 3 books in every genre I can think imaginable, from sci-fi to romance to everything. And there's always something in the books that something, maybe their writing style, how they describe things, or just something that I learned personally too. And it does help me as a writer. I totally agree with that.
I love how you mentioned that you got recommendations from a student. This summer, I've been embarked on this pen pal program for time travelers, where I just basically had a little packet of Chime Travelers postcards printed up, and I just basically put a little note on Facebook and said, anybody who wants to have a pen pal for their kiddo this summer, just send me their email or send me your mailing address, and I'll write you a postcard. And so I sat down, and I've been handwriting these little postcards, and one of the questions that I've been asking the children that I've been writing to is, what are you reading this summer? What books are you checking out? Because I'm looking for book recommendations. And it's been so fun as their responses are starting to come back to me to see the broad variety of different books. So I've had everything from Captain Underpants to The Arabian Nights recommended to me. So neither of which have I already read. So I have more and more things to add to my reading list.
Yeah,
So.
You've got more to read. By the way, I recently read one of your Chime Travelers and just loved it.
Oh, thank you. It's
yeah, my kids read that Magic Treehouse when they were little, and that reminded me, because they always loved that idea of traveling to another place and learning something about that culture, and then to have it with the saints, that was just brilliant.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing with fiction, with fictionalizing history, because you have to be, obviously there's not really time travel, or at least I don't know that there really is. But one thing that was so fun in writing Chime Travelers was that the stories were really pulled directly from the source material. So, for example, with the very first book, which is The Secret of the Shamrock, it's so fortunate that St. Patrick left behind his confessio, his autobiography, and so much of that story just is basically a modern day updating of what he told us in his own words about his life. So it's just really a treat to get to do that. And I know you've discovered in your own writing too that way of kind of telling these timeless truths through a fun and just an affectionate and really attractive process of telling a story.
Yeah, that's what we hope as writers, that we'll be able to connect with people. But luckily for me, with mine are more contemporary, can kind of make up a lot of the things. I'm always in awe of the people who do more historic fiction and all the research and so forth that they is involved in that.
But even with writing about snowboarders, you have to basically go do a little bit of research about what you're talking about. So we get to learn a lot as storytellers.
Yeah, that is true. It is fun.
Well, we're winding down to the end of our time together. I do want to definitely point our readers towards your website at LeslieWahl.com, and it's not at all like it sounds. So I'm going to spell it out really quick, which is Leslie's name is Leslea. wahl.com. Certainly, we will have that link in our show notes so that you can head over and take a look at her titles. And I, again, want to really recommend to people that they check out this summer CatholicTeenBooks.com and this beautiful new anthology, Secrets, Visible and Invisible, by 7 wonderful authors that I can't list all of here. So we'll have links to all these in our show notes. Leslea, before we get back to let you get back to your writing, are there any kind of closing thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Just one thing I was going to mention that I don't think I did too much, that each of the books that I write have like an underlying message. I said they're fun and adventurous, but like you mentioned once in one point, that finding your gifts from God, but also discovering who God wants to be. And even my new book will be about answering a call from God, having the courage to say yes. So in saying that, I hope all the readers out there can answer yes and find their own calling to everybody.
Certainly, we know that all of our callings are unique and special and very important. So those are, especially in the teenage years, I think, particularly important messages to pass along to our kids. So friends, definitely check out the work of Leslea Wahl. She's an amazing storyteller doing amazing work. And Leslea, I can't wait to snuggle up this afternoon with a couple of your books and just spend some time reading. So on behalf of readers everywhere, keep telling your stories. They really matter.
Oh, thank you so much for letting me share.
Thanks, Leslea. God bless. Well, friends, that is it for this week's episode of Lisa, Hendey and Friends. It is just the summer is passing us by so quickly, but it's so fun to hear from you about how you're connecting with the different guests that we're inviting on to the podcast. And I love when you recommend guests to me too. So be sure to use a few different ways that you can provide feedback to me. First is by just dropping an email to lisa@catholicmom.com, or you can use the voice recorder feature on your phone and just make me a little bit of voice feedback, or on social media. Just about everywhere I'm at Lisa Hendey, and I love connecting with you on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or whatever has come along between the days when we get together. So check me out on social media at Lisa Hendey. And I hope that you get to spend some time this week not only checking out Leslea's books, but also just sitting down with whatever great stories are nearby you. The world needs stories, and stories truly matter. So thank you for sharing your story and for being part of mine. Until next week, friends, God bless.
Breadbox Media Programming is brought to you by...
We want to help others, especially in places of strife, such as the Holy Land, where Christianity is dwindling by the day. But how to help? Here's an easy way. Buying products through the Holy Land gift shop. Every product you purchase at myfranciscan.org/shop helps Christians support their families and stay in the Holy Land. Olive wood, embroidery, spices, and many more authentic products from the Holy Land are available right now at myfranciscan.org/shop. The Holy Land Gift Shop, bringing the Holy Land home.
Thank you for listening to Breadbox Media. Find more about us at breadboxmedia.com.